beings, especially in Africa, had achieved an insanely high level of sophistication. What they had done in Egypt is still, to this day, one of the most confusing things that anyone's ever been able to accomplish.
For the first time ever, scanning technology has been used on pyramids, and the results are quite surprising.
They sat at the feet of the ancient Egyptians. They said they learned everything they knew from the ancient Egyptians. But somehow, archaeology has rewritten the narrative. I don't think anybody knows how they did it, how they lifted those stones, how they brought them up to that level. I think we're looking at a lost technology.
I think we're getting very close to rediscovering some of the things that our ancient ancestors were up to.
This guy paraglided over the Egyptian pyramids. Take a look at this. Just earlier this month, a 35-year-old paramotor pilot named Yanis Terzis flew over some famous Egyptian landmarks, including the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx. It's incredibly breathtaking footage, and I am incredibly jealous of this man. At one point, he got up close enough to see the symbols etched onto the top. That is incredible. That's a part of the pyramids we never get to see. I didn't even know there was stuff written on the top until today. As Terzis stated, most of the paramotor pilots fly high for safety precautions. Sometimes I like to get a little bit risky on my flights and go close to the ground and over the building to get amazing shots and videos. And an amazing video he got. He also went on to say, on the pyramid flight, I had the intention of touching my foot tip over the pyramids. That was something unique that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life.
وأحب أن أؤكد أننا مستمرين في العمل.
That was Ahmed Issa, the Egyptian Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, talking about a discovery that had just been made in the Great Pyramid of Giza, a hidden corridor that had been sealed off for thousands of years. Using advanced scanning technology, researchers revealed a hidden corridor that measures about 9 meters long and 2 meters wide. This corridor is located on the northern side of the pyramid, just above the main entrance, and it's sealed off, meaning it can't be accessed from the outside. It's believed to date back about 4,500 years. The discovery was announced by Ahmed Issa and the famous Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass during a ceremony held at the pyramid. The Scan Pyramids project, which uses cutting-edge scanning methods to explore unexplored areas of the pyramids, was responsible for uncovering this chamber. Experts from France, Japan, Germany, and Canada collaborated on this project using 5 non-invasive techniques to analyze the structure without disturbing it. Still waiting for an update on this story. At this point, we still don't know what was actually hidden in the corridor, if anything, and we don't really know what it was used for, but they're still looking into it. Hopefully we'll get an update soon. Just back in May, a team of researchers from Japan and Egypt uncovered what they're calling an underground anomaly while studying the area beneath the Western Cemetery of the Giza Pyramid Complex. The Western Cemetery, which is located close to the Great Pyramid, contains a bunch of mastabas, which are rectangular tombs made of limestone or mud. But one section of the cemetery has been largely untouched, a flat area without any visible structures. Curious about what might be buried there, the research team used ground-penetrating radar and electrical resuscitivity tomography, or ERT, to scan the ground. And they noticed this odd density under the surface, as if something man-made had been buried below. The researchers identified 2 distinct underground structures, one shallow and one deep. The shallow structure is L-shaped, just under 2 meters deep. The deeper structure is even more mysterious. The team is seeking to excavate the site to find out what these structures are. Who knows what they'll find down there? All I know is I am impatiently waiting. The biggest mystery about the pyramids, and really one of the biggest mysteries in the world, is how they were built. There have been some interesting theories over the years, but just back in May, scientists made a huge breakthrough. A research team from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, thinks they've found clues to a long-lost branch of the River Nile, now buried beneath desert and farmland. A river that might have played a big role in transporting material for the pyramids. For years, archaeologists have suspected that the ancient Egyptians Egyptians used a nearby waterway for transporting heavy stone blocks, but they didn't really know where this river could have been. To uncover the mystery, the research team combined radar, satellite imagery, historical maps, geophysical surveys, and sediment coring to create this detailed map of the river branch. The area is thought to have been buried by a major drought and sandstorms thousands of years ago. Radar technology allowed the researchers to penetrate the sand surface and produce images of hidden features, revealing buried rivers and ancient structures near where many pyramids are located. The river branch, dubbed the Aramat branch, Aramat meaning pyramids in Arabic, was found to border 31 pyramids built between 4700 and 3700 years ago. This means that the river was likely used to help transport material for the pyramids. Dr. Suzanne Onstein, a co-author of the study, stated that locating the actual river branch and having the data that shows there was a waterway that could be used for the transportation of heavier blocks, equipment, people, everything, really helps us explain pyramid construction. She went on to explain that the river would have allowed the ancient Egyptians to, quote, use the river's energy to carry these heavy blocks rather than human labor. Back in September of 2023, a bunch of hidden chambers were found in an ancient Egyptian pyramid. This pyramid, built around 4,400 years ago for Pharaoh Sahur, is located in the Abusir necropolis in northern Egypt. The pyramid has been undergoing restoration since 2019 to stabilize it and clean out its interiors. And as workers were clearing away debris from a collapsed corridor, they stumbled on these hidden chambers. The spaces were likely storage rooms, which might not sound as thrilling as finding a hidden treasure, but they're important for understanding how the pyramid was designed and used. The pyramid's tunnels have been blocked since its first excavation in 1836, and now, almost 2 centuries later, researchers had access to areas that have been hidden for ages. What you're looking at here is a massive 100-ton artifact, dubbed a black box, found in a cave system about 12 miles south of the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is just one of 24, and we still don't know exactly what these thousands of year-old boxes were built for. They're made of solid Aswan granite. Again, they're incredibly heavy, and it's not even clear how these things were carved and transported. The engineering is remarkable, too. These things are smooth as tabletops on the inside and outside. They also have hieroglyphics carved into them. Question has always been, though, how were these incredibly heavy slabs of stone transported from rock quarries to their current location? Just another unsolved mystery of ancient Egypt. Back in 2020, archaeologists made a huge find in a necropolis south of Cairo. They uncovered dozens of ancient coffins. Khalid El-Anani, Egypt's antiquities minister at the time, said that at least 59 sealed sarcophagi were discovered, most containing mummies, buried over 2,600 years ago in 3 wells. The discovery was announced at the iconic step pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara, where the coffins were displayed. At the event, one sarcophagus was opened in front of reporters. Saqqara is home to at least 11 pyramids and a number of tombs from different eras. And these recently found coffins belong to priests, top officials, and elites. Among the finds were 28 statues of Ptah and a bronze statue of the god Nefertim, inscribed with the name of its owner, a priest named Babi Amun. Alright, this next one's actually pretty entertaining. Just a little reminder that people never really change. Recent findings reveal that ancient Egyptians had a very unique way of tracking employee time off. A limestone tablet known as an ostrakon, housed in the British Museum and dating back to 1250 BCE, gives us a glimpse into the work-life balance of ancient Egyptians. This tablet lists 40 workers and details the days they missed, along with reasons given like illness and family duties. The absences are organized by season and date. For instance, on month 4, winter day 24, a worker named Pandub missed his shift because his mother wasn't feeling well and he had to take care of her. Of course, a lot of workers took off work because they were sick or injured. One name that's listed is Hainafer, who had eye troubles. There's also Seba, who was bitten by a scorpion. And another reason for not coming into work was brewing beer. This actually shows up a number of times. Beer was a staple drink in Egypt and was actually considered a meal. Anyway, just goes to show that people struggled with their work-life balance just like we do today. Although I don't think calling into work because you're brewing beer is gonna go over very well today. What you're looking at here is Pharaoh Khufu's sarcophagus. It may not look like much, but it's actually an incredibly impressive piece of engineering. It was made from a single piece of granite weighing about 3.75 tons. It's so large that it couldn't have been brought into the burial chamber after the pyramid was completed, so it had to have been placed there during the pyramid's construction. And what makes this sarcophagus even more impressive is that it was hollowed out from the inside, and it has holes that look like they were made with some kind of drill. So the question is, how did people in ancient times with what we think were primitive tools manage to create something like this? The effort and skill needed to make Khufu's coffin, like so many other constructions from ancient Egypt, just seems very ahead of its time. In 2015, something unusual was detected at the Great Pyramid using thermal cameras. Researchers found higher temperatures in 3 stones at the bottom of the pyramid. The Egyptian Antiquities Ministry had a few possible explanations for these heat spots. You figured they could be empty spaces within the pyramid, internal air currents, or just variations in the building materials that were used. Of course, there were also fun theories that the heat was being given off by ancient technology buried deep beneath the pyramids. Experts had been actively searching for hidden chambers in the pyramids. A team of architects and scientists from Egypt, France, Canada, and Japan conducted the thermal survey using sunrise and sunset. So they took advantage of the temperature changes as the sun heated the limestone and then allowed it to cool down. The ministry found that there were these thermal anomalies during their observations. One heat spot was found on the eastern side of the Great Pyramid. The stones there showed a distinct difference in temperature compared to others, hinting at something beneath the surface. This discovery was what eventually led to the Operation Scan Pyramids project, where they found that hidden corridor in the Pyramid of Giza that I mentioned earlier. Now, this may not look like much, but what if I told you it was made thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago? This is the Sabu disc, a very strange ancient Egyptian artifact believed to date back to around 3000 to 2800 BCE. It was discovered in 1936 in the Saqqara necropolis, specifically in the tomb of an official named Sabu, which is how it got its name. This disc is made from schist, a type of stone known for its durability, and as you can see, it has a unique design for the time. It looks very modern, like a broken piece of machinery or something. Some researchers think it could have been some sort of ceremonial object, given the fact that it was found in a tomb. Others think that it might have had a more practical function. But the advanced design of this thing might mean it could have belonged to a more sophisticated technology that's just been lost to time. And did the Egyptians even build it themselves, or was there some extraterrestrial influence? Could the ancient Egyptians have been in contact with advanced beings from another planet? Well, that's pretty much what this whole video is about. The Abydos carvings found in the ancient temple of Seti I and Abydos seem to depict this mix of traditional hieroglyphs with some seriously strange images. When you look closely, you might notice that some of these carvings look a lot like modern vehicles, like a helicopter, a submarine, a jet plane. One of the things looks a lot like the land speeder from Star Wars to me, and to a lot of other people online. The sort of eerie resemblance to things we see today, excluding the land speeder, unfortunately, has led to some wild theories. One of the most popular ideas is that these carvings were depictions of some of the ancient Egyptians' advanced technology, possibly thanks to extraterrestrial visitors. Imagine aliens coming to Earth thousands and thousands of years ago and sharing their tech with Egyptians. It's just a fun idea. And if that is true, we also gotta ask, who were these people? Or I guess, what were these people or things? Were they from another planet? Or could they maybe have been time travelers from our future? Take a look at this odd coin. What historical politician is that supposed to be exactly? Looks a lot like an alien to me. So there's been this story circulating online about this collection of coins found in Egypt that seem to depict aliens. The coins apparently date back to the 1st century BCE and feature a humanoid figure with large eyes, a tiny mouth, bald head, your classic gray. There are also coins with your typical flying saucer carved into them. The coins were supposedly discovered by a group of construction workers who were renovating a house in southern Egypt. Now, while digging in the basement, they stumbled on a small box filled with these coins, all in surprisingly good condition. After the find, the coins were taken to a local museum for further examination. Archaeologists dated the coins and concluded that they were likely minted in Egypt. Now, are these coins evidence of ancient alien contact? Did the ancient Egyptians carve their extraterrestrial visitors into their money? Well, sure, there are some spooky artifacts and mysteries surrounding ancient Egypt, but these coins are hoaxes. At least I'm 99.9% sure. I don't know, there's always that small chance though. Well, this is an odd looking creature, isn't it? On March 21st of 2016, a post on the website Worldwide Science Stories claimed that archaeologists had discovered a, quote, alien mummy inside an Egyptian pyramid. The story came from sources who wanted to remain anonymous. According to the report, the mummy was found by archaeologists near Lahoun while exploring a small pyramid linked to the 12th dynasty of Senusret II. This alleged alien mummy was said to be between 150 and 160 centimeters long, supposedly dating back over 2,000 years. Now, apparently the details about this mysterious find weren't disclosed right away. And again, a source from the Egyptian Department of Antiquities confirmed the discovery but insisted on remaining unnamed. Now, it's an odd looking mummy, definitely looks like your classic alien to me, the large oval shaped eyes, the small slit for a mouth, very reptilian, and apparently inscriptions found near the tomb referred to the creature as Osserunet, a name interpreted to mean star or sent from heaven. Now, this is a pretty controversial story, as you can probably imagine. A lot of people think this one is a hoax, but it isn't the only strange looking mummy found in ancient Egypt. There have been lots, so is it possible that there are other ones that have just been covered up? Who knows? The Thule papyrus is a really cool find. The story starts back in 1933 when Alberto Thule, who is a curator at the Vatican Museums, discovered a roll of papyrus in Cairo. This document is said to date back to the time of Pharaoh Thutmose III around 1480 BCE. But here's where it gets really strange. After Thule passed away, this scroll just vanished without a trace, and years later an Italian Egyptologist named Boris de Recewaltz claimed he'd found a transcription of the Thule papyrus, and according to his translation, the text tells an incredible story about a day when a large disc appeared in the sky. This disc was about 164 feet long and 16.5 feet wide and gave off a really awful smell. Then more discs kept appearing, shining brighter than the sun. The pharaoh ordered incense offerings to appease the Egyptian god Amun-Ra and commanded that the event be recorded for future generations. Thus, we now have the Thule papyrus. Next, let's talk about Egyptian hieroglyphs in general and some of the odd places they've been spotted, like on crashed UFOs, for example. The infamous Roswell incident in 1947 and the Rendlesham Forest sightings in 1980 were both said to have strange symbols carved into the sides of the UFOs. Some witnesses claimed to see what looked like Egyptian hieroglyphs on the sides of both craft, incredibly strange, and the symbols discovered on the Roswell UFO are said to have matched the ones found on the Rendlesham object. One specific design is apparently a triangle with two spheres that appears on both. So why would UFOs have Egyptian-looking symbols etched into them? In the Dendera temple complex, there's a famous relief with an image dubbed the Dendera Light. The image depicts a snake emerging from a lotus flower, seemingly held up by a pillar with human arms at the end. But you gotta look more closely to see that. What's immediately obvious to us modern folks is that this looks a lot like a giant light bulb, specifically a Crookes tube, an early type of light bulb that was invented in the 19th century. There's a pretty uncanny resemblance, really, but is it just a coincidence? Or is this ancient artwork actually depicting a piece of advanced technology? Another interesting thing about this one, the specific room featuring the Dendera light is the only one in the entire temple with no evidence of fire-burning lamps. In every other part of the temple, archaeologists found residues from what looked to have been lamps, but not here. So if the room was completely dark, how did the ancient Egyptians light it up? And why would they go to the trouble of carving such an elaborate image if it was just going to be hidden in darkness? Well, maybe the room wasn't pitch black. Maybe they illuminated it with some other, more advanced method. The Saqqara bird is a cute little sculpture, but it's also led to some pretty interesting conversations. Discovered in an ancient Egyptian tomb near Saqqara, this wooden figure is around 2,200 years old. Now, at first glance, it looks like, a toy bird, but looking closer, and it also kind of looks like a model airplane. The wings look a lot more like a plane than a bird's wings. So this got people wondering, did the ancient Egyptians have some knowledge of flight? Back in 1969, an Egyptian doctor named Khalil Messiah proposed a pretty cool idea. What if this bird was actually a model of an ancient flying machine? People have crafted replicas of the artifact to test how aerodynamic it is, and some of these models have been found to glide pretty well when thrown. If it's not an ancient depiction of a plane, that kid back in the day had a pretty cool toy. Well, we're talking about another find in Saqqara. Near the Pyramid of Djoser, archaeologists came across 24 coffin-shaped black boxes carved from solid Aswan granite. This rock is incredibly tough, so tough that even modern tools have trouble scratching it. So, the fact that some of these boxes have intricate hieroglyphs etched into them is pretty impressive. Not only that, but each box is massive, weighing over 100 tons. Some people think the craftsmanship is so advanced that it feels impossible for ancient Egyptians to have done it alone. And for those who believe in alien involvement, there's a theory that these designs came from somewhere else or were inspired by something advanced. And of course, I can't do this list without talking about the Great Pyramids themselves. Now, while I'm of the belief that ancient Egyptians were just crafty and way ahead of their time, even I can't deny how enticing the idea of extraterrestrial beings assisting in their creation is. Now, aside from how incredible the pyramids are and the mystery surrounding how they were built, we also gotta talk about where they're positioned. The three main pyramids are aligned in a way that closely matches the stars in Orion's belt. The Egyptians definitely had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. Even more fascinating is the fact that the sizes of the pyramids seem to correspond to the brightness of the stars. Two of the pyramids are nearly identical in height, while the third is about half as tall. In the night sky, two of the stars in Orion's belt shine brightly, with the third star being dimmer, mirroring the layout of the pyramids. The pyramids are also positioned in a nearly straight line with the North Magnetic Pole, so it's very impressive that an ancient civilization had such an advanced knowledge of science, geometry, and astronomy. They had to have had skills and understanding similar to what we have today to design and construct the pyramids with such perfect alignment. And again, the size of the pyramids themselves is also just remarkable. So what do you all think? Did they have some help from extraterrestrial visitors, or were the ancient Egyptians just that ahead of their time?
Up first is the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was one of the single most important archaeological discoveries ever made in human history, and the single most important discovery when it comes to the ancient Egyptian world. The Rosetta Stone is an obelisk inscribed with a royal decree from King Ptolemy V. The decree was for all citizens of Egypt, and given Egypt was an expansive empire with numerous different dialects and languages, it was written in 3 different scripts. The top has Egyptian hieroglyphics, while the middle has the slightly later Demotic script, which is also an Egyptian language but with letters instead of glyphs. Finally, the base is written in Old Greek. Each script was written in almost the exact same way, meaning the text was the first discovered that allowed modern knowledge of ancient Greek to lead to actual translations of both Demotic and hieroglyphic. Without this discovery, we would have no idea how to read thousands of other documents and texts, and it's allowed scientists and researchers to actually translate the discovered writings on sarcophagi, tombs, papyrus, and much more. It's difficult to imagine just how different our knowledge of ancient Egypt and Greece would be without our knowledge of the Rosetta Stone. Next is the Khufu ship. The Khufu ship was discovered in the grave of Pharaoh Khufu and is the oldest known ship ever discovered. Not only is it incredibly old and filled with unfathomably valuable grave goods, the Khufu ship is also in incredibly good condition. It's a style called a solar barge, allegedly the very ship design which the sun god Ra sails, and it's in such insanely good condition that this 5,000-year-old ship could be dropped in a river or lake today and would sail as well as it did 5,000 years ago. It's so well preserved, even the rope survived the sands of time, and numerous traditional ancient Egyptian rope tying techniques were gleaned from the boat. It's It's considered a masterwork of woodcraft and shipbuilding, and elevates our opinion of the engineering ability of the ancient Egyptians greatly. It was made of Lebanese cedar, the same as the tree on the current Lebanese flag. Next is the unknown queen. In 2022, archaeologists working near Saqqara quite literally rewrote history when they discovered a brand new tomb while excavating King Tut's tomb. Saqqara is a massive necropolis, a city of the deceased, where hundreds of thousands of remains and burials were conducted. They uncovered 300 more coffins and over 100 more mummies, but even greater, they discovered a brand new Egyptian queen, literally never before heard of in the historical record, Queen Neith. Neith was undoubtedly powerful and respected, judging by her ornate casket and the tomb she was placed in, but to discover an Egyptian queen entirely unrecorded in the historical record is a truly fantastic and mind-blowing discovery, and opens up numerous doors for more Egyptologists and researchers to investigate. The tomb was also likely built in the New Kingdom period, which is over 3,000 years ago and is considered highly unique for an area better known for Old Kingdom period tombs. The tomb also includes a mummy with a solid gold face mask, gaming pieces for the game's Senate, a huge limestone sarcophagus, and a soldier buried with his bronze axe. Next is the Gizan Chamber. In March of 2023, a truly incredible discovery was made that flipped the archaeological community on its head. The Great Pyramid of Giza, which has been standing for thousands of years and studied for hundreds, still somehow has new discoveries to reveal to us. Using advanced ultrasound techniques and infrared thermography, a new team of researchers were able to locate and identify a mysterious hidden chamber. Now, no one's been inside, only identified it through scientific means, and we really don't know what the chamber is meant to be for. Some have said it's some sort of ritual room, perhaps a place for sacrifices or curses, or maybe it's a storage closet for the workers who built the pyramid that was bricked up when they were done. Researchers are fairly certain that the room takes significant weight off of the entryway and may be a sort of internal structural arch, designed to reduce weight and spread out the strain so the entrance doesn't collapse. It's believed these techniques were perfected on previous pyramids, but we still have no idea what this enclosed and hidden chamber could possibly be for. Knowing the ancient Egyptians, it's almost impossible that it holds no spiritual, religious, or cultural meaning whatsoever, and yet there does not seem to be any way inside. Maybe it's a waiting room for the spirits of the dead. Next is the Golden Tongue. At the Taposiris Magna Temple, researchers made a fascinating discovery, finding several poorly preserved mummies with a shocking item, a golden tongue placed inside the skull. The ancient Egyptians believed a golden tongue was required to be able to speak to Osiris in the afterlife, but it was long considered a myth by many that they would actually place gold tongues into the mummies' mouths. This is no gold leaf either, but a solid gold tongue left inside of the mummies. There were numerous other artifacts and quite a bit of gold as well, but the mummies were in a shockingly poor state. They were very badly preserved and almost entirely broken down, something which is very unusual given that the Egyptians had mastered the art of mummification several decades before this tomb was filled with the deceased. It may be possible that the family didn't have the money to pay for the full embalming, but could spare enough for the gold for the tongue. However, it does still leave a mystery. These people were obviously well loved and well off given the amount of things they had to accompany them, so maybe they just had a bad embalmer. Next are mysterious mummies. Egypt is revered in the scientific community for two big things: cool new dinosaur species, and a whole crapload of mummies. The Saqqara necropolis is one of the largest necropolises on Earth and has been the home of several tens of thousands of mummies, both human and otherwise. Recently, however, Saqqara was the site of another mummy discovery, this time of several mummified cats, snakes, and crocodiles. That's not all though. There were also mummified birds and even a mummified beetle, about 4 times larger than it should have been. Maybe someone saw a massive beetle and thought, wow, this is incredible, we should really preserve this for the future generations, and hopefully everybody around them said, you're weird, dude. There were also 75 bronze cat statues, really not dodging the weird accusations. Cats were deeply important to the ancient Egyptians, not only because they dealt with pests and prevented disease, but also because they were seen as almost godlike, and as a proud personal servant of a cat, I can totally see where they're coming from. Several dozen mummified house cats were discovered alongside 5 mummified big cats, at least one of which is a lion. It's likely these were offerings or idols of some sort, allowing the living to closer connect to the realm of the gods and the dead. And finally is the Falcon Shrine. The port of Berenike was a critical one for the ancient Egyptians, and so continues to be searched and excavated in search of strange and wondrous things. And boy oh boy is this strange, at least. Archaeologists discovered a shrine filled with some of the most unusual items ever discovered. First and most shocking were the 15 headless falcons. Why were the falcons headless? Why were there so many? We don't know, but that's not all. The falcons were arrayed on a dais before a stone pedestal holding 3 stone statues of gods. One was the child god Harpocrates, another has a falcon head but has not been quite identified, and the last has also not been identified but has cow horns and a solar disc. It's believed the falcons were offerings to the gods alongside some other remains that suggest sacrifice and feasting took place in this small temple. There was an iron harpoon also laid out alongside the falcons, but the final piece may be the most unusual. A large stela that reads, in ancient Greek, "It is improper to boil a head here." So at least we know the falcon heads weren't boiled, but we know very, very little else about this religious group. The temple dates from after the 4th century AD, meaning Christianity was already the dominant religion in the Roman Empire, and yet this small cult or temple continued to survive, showing that the ancient Egyptians did not just trade over to Christianity, but that the old gods survived for longer in worship than we initially believed.
We've talked about an incredible discovery archaeologist Kathleen Martinez made a couple years back, the possible location of Cleopatra's tomb. Well, I have an update on this, but before we get into that, here's a recap. Kathleen Martinez has been searching for Cleopatra's tomb since 2005, and in 2022 she started getting onto something big. She believed she may have finally discovered the tunnel that leads to it. The tunnel was found beneath the temple ruins of Taposiris Magna, a site built around 280 BCE that's dedicated to the gods Osiris and Isis. The tunnel sits about 42.5 feet underground, carved into the sandstone, but parts of this tunnel have been submerged in water, of course making it a bit more of a challenge to explore. At Taposiris Magna, the archaeological team has already uncovered some fascinating artifacts, sculptures of Isis, coins featuring Cleopatra and Alexander the Great, and even an entire burial ground filled with mummies. But the next step was for the team to, of course, investigate the nearby Mediterranean Sea where part of the tunnel is submerged. But let's get on to this update. Martinez needed permission from the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities to carry out the next step of her investigation, but she needed a specific artifact to back up her theory that this temple was dedicated to the goddess Isis, a goddess Cleopatra famously claimed to be the reincarnation of. The item she was looking for is called a foundation plate, inscribed with important details about when and why the temple was built. Archaeological missions had been searching for this plate since the 1800s, but they all came up empty-handed. That is until Dr. Martinez. She found the foundation plate she was looking for, which reads, "The king of high and low Egypt, Ptolemy V lives forever, beloved by Isis." This plate finally proved that the temple was indeed dedicated to the goddess. Now, to help with her underwater search, she reached out to Robert Ballard, the diver who found the Titanic, and now with the support from the Egyptian government, her expedition was a go. During their exploration in submerged Alexandria, the team found structures standing 3 meters tall, and they did not look like natural formations. They also uncovered basalt, the same material used in statues from the first temple, confirming these structures were made by humans. More than 5 other points of interest were also identified and are set to be excavated in the next permit season, some even 10 kilometers out from the coast. Dr. Martinez is convinced that if Alexandria is underwater, then Cleopatra's temple may be as well. There will definitely be more updates to come. The Valley of the Golden Mummies is an amazing burial site found in Egypt's western desert. It dates back to the Greco-Roman period and was discovered in 1996 by archaeologist Zahi Hawass and his team. They uncovered around 250 mummies, over several seasons, but Hawass later estimated that there could be more than 10,000 mummies buried in this area. When the team first found these mummies, many were in surprisingly good condition too. They had a variety of decorating styles, but the researchers identified 4 main ones. The first style featured a gilded mask covering the face, along with a gilded waistcoat that depicted different gods and goddesses. About 60 of the mummies were adorned like this. The second style was covered with cortinage, which is a type of material made from layers of linen and plaster. These mummies displayed scenes of gods, including Anubis, who is known as the god of the dead. The third style didn't have any gold or fancy decorations, but was instead placed inside a pottery coffin shaped like a person, known as an anthropoid. The fourth style was simply wrapped in linen. Each mummy was buried with a number of artifacts like jewelry, pottery for food, wine jars, and coins. This next story is, it's always been one of my favorites. It sounds completely made up. It's gonna sound like the Egyptian version of the Goonies, but this is actually a real thing that happened, and yeah, I just love this news story. So the media didn't release the guy's full name. He was simply referred to as Nagy. But Nagy was digging in his backyard one day in 2015 when he stumbled on this tunnel. Now, before I even say where the tunnel leads, let me just say, finding a tunnel in your backyard would just be incredibly cool no matter what. Like, I'd be calling my friends over, we'd be getting an adventure going, I'd buy an Indiana Jones hat, whole 9 yards, but let's get to where this tunnel actually led. The tunnel, right in this guy's backyard, led to Khufu Pyramid, one of the 3 pyramids that make up the Giza pyramid complex. It's also one of the largest and oldest. Now, how insane is that? First of all, why was he digging? Who just goes digging in their backyard? If I was digging in my backyard, I'd find some worms. Probably that would be about it. This guy randomly decides to dig one day and finds a tunnel leading to the Great Pyramid. He does live in Egypt, but still, what are the chances of this? The tunnel was about 33 feet beneath his house and is made of stone blocks. Now, he didn't go into this tunnel and make his way to the Great Pyramid and find this out for himself. That would have been way cooler, but probably not the best idea to just go into an unknown tunnel buried in your backyard. Instead, he contacted authorities and archaeologists were sent to his yard who made the discovery. And what's even crazier is that this tunnel was actually something archaeologists have been seeking out for a long time. It was written about, but had never actually been found until then. In 2011, archaeologists in the ancient capital city of Avaris discovered a series of severed hands buried in the ground. The 12 severed hands dated back to around 1500 BCE and were found in pits just outside the walls of a palace. In one pit, 8 hands were found grouped together, while the others were in a nearby pit only about 3 feet away. Interestingly, both pits would have been visible from the throne room of the palace, meaning they might have been very important trophies for the rulers. Researcher Julia Greski from the German Archaeological Institute noted that Egyptian texts mention a practice called gold of honor. This involved presenting the hands of slain enemies to the pharaoh in exchange for gold jewelry, like necklaces or pendants. Interestingly, there were no cut marks on these bones. They'd been removed very carefully, possibly as part of a ritual. The tendons that connected the hands to the arms were likely severed after death and after rigor mortis had passed. But why take your enemy's hands as trophies? Well, hands were very symbolically important to the ancient Egyptians, representing power and agency. On top of that, without your hands, you can't really wield a weapon, so I guess it makes sense. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, losing a hand would prevent you from entering the afterlife as well. So considering that, hands would have been pretty significant war trophies. The catacombs of Qam el-Shokhafa just look incredible. I would absolutely love to explore this place. Looks like something straight out of Zelda. They're actually considered one of these 7 wonders of the Middle Ages. It's a necropolis made up of a series of tombs, statues, and artifacts with a blend of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman influence. Discovered in 1900, a donkey accidentally fell into this shaft, and that's how this place was found. That's crazy. These catacombs date back to the 2nd century CE, during the age of the Antonine emperors. They were used as burial chambers from the 2nd to the 4th centuries. The catacombs are made up of 3 levels that were tunneled into solid rock. The 3rd level was completely underwater until more recent restorations. And inside the catacombs is a funeral banquet hall where family and friends would have gathered on stone couches during burials. The name Kam el Shokafa means mound of shards, and it comes from the many broken pottery shards found in the area. Visitors would bring food and wine to the tombs, and instead of carrying the empty jars back home, they'd break them and leave the pieces behind. When this site was discovered, heaps of these broken plates were found. Among all the fascinating finds is the Hall of Caracalla, which contains the bones of horses that were buried there for Emperor Caracalla in 215 CE. As I mentioned before, there's this blend of styles here. On the walls of the catacombs are carvings, some blending in Greek and Roman influences. For example, there are scenes depicting the Egyptian god Anubis, but dressed in Roman-style clothing. The tomb chamber features 3 massive stone sarcophagi, which are super intricate. I mean, it just looks like the type of place you could spend years exploring, and you'd always find something new to look at. The tomb of Nefertari is a beautiful burial site in Egypt's Valley of the Queens. It was discovered in 1904 by Ernesto Schiaparelli, who is the director of the Egyptian Museum in Turin. Nefertari, whose name means beautiful companion, was the favorite wife of Pharaoh Ramses II, and he made sure everyone knew it. He called her the one for whom the sun shines, and even built a temple in her honor. The paintings in the tomb reveal a lot about Nefertari's life and the Egyptian beliefs surrounding death. One famous image shows her playing a game called Senet, showing the importance of games in her culture. There's also a scene of her meeting Thoth, the god of writing, meaning she may have been literate. The wall art also shows scenes from the Book of the Dead detailing rituals and tests Nefertari would face in the afterlife. After this discovery, it became clear that the tomb had suffered from looting, unfortunately. The treasures, including Nefertari's sarcophagus and mummy, were gone, but remnants of her knees were found, oddly enough, and about 2/3 of its wall paintings still remain, fortunately. The tomb has also suffered water damage, unfortunately, and mold thanks to humidity. In 1986, there was a restoration project to preserve the paintings, and it was completed in 1992. Thonis Heraklion was an ancient Egyptian city that ended up at the bottom of the sea. It was located near the mouth of the Nile River and was one of the most important cities in ancient Egypt at one point, a thriving port city during the time of the pharaohs, a center for trade with Greece and other Mediterranean countries, and it played a big role in the Egyptian economy. The city was known for its grand temples, the statues dedicated to various gods and goddesses. We don't know exactly why it sank, but there were likely natural disasters like earthquakes and rising sea levels, which led to it gradually sinking underwater. For centuries, Thonis was lost and forgotten until underwater archaeologists rediscovered it in 2000, with divers finding well-preserved artifacts like statues, pottery, and religious objects.
Starting off our list today, we have the Screaming Mummy, one of the more disturbing archaeological finds of the 1800s. In 1886, wow, this is not a recent find. In 1886, head of the Egyptian's antique service Gaston Maspero unwrapped what is now known as Man-E, or the Screaming Mummy. Man-E was found inside of a plain coffin wrapped up in sheepskin, which is already strange considering the fact that most mummies were wrapped in fine linens, and according to experts, sheepskin was considered impure by the ancient Egyptians. Not only that, but this corpse had not been properly embalmed, just left out to dry. Also, both of the mummy's hands and feet were bound. And then there is, of course, the matter of its expression, a contorted scream, which have led archaeologists to believe that Man-E was in a great deal of pain at the time of his death. Not only that, but other evidence has brought researchers to the conclusion that Man-E might have been a prince and the son of the pharaoh Ramses III. Ancient papyrus scrolls reveal that the pharaoh's family, army, commanders, servants, and wives had planned to kill him. It also says that conspirators were captured and tried. While at first it is believed that the mutiny was unsuccessful, a CT scan of Pharaoh Ramses III showed that he actually likely died after his throat was cut. If that really is the case, and it was his son who killed him, that would explain why Man-E was not only killed, but also terribly dishonored in his death.
Next up, we have one of the most exciting things you could ever hope to find in one of the Egyptian pyramids, a secret chamber. So in early March of 2023, Egypt's antiquities authorities unveiled a pretty remarkable discovery. It was a sealed-off chamber inside of one of the Great Pyramids at Giza, dating back approximately 4,500 years. The chamber was found using advanced scanning technology on the northern side of the Pyramid of Khufu. They found that the corridor is about 30 feet long and over 6 feet wide, situated above the pyramid's main entrance. What makes it even more interesting is that it's not accessible from the outside. So, what is the purpose of this chamber, or what was the purpose? Archaeologists are still not sure, but the hope here is that this tunnel actually leads to King Khufu's burial chamber. Interestingly, this is not the first discovery of a mystery chamber in this very same pyramid. Back in 2017, scientists found a sealed-off corridor, a 30-meter chamber inside of Khufu. So there were various scanning techniques used here, including ultrasound measurements and ground-penetrating radars employed to locate this chamber. Christian Gross, a leading member of the project, said he's hoping there could be even more secrets in this pyramid, and I, for one, agree.
Next up, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But what would 1,000 words be worth if your tongue was made of gold? Why do I ask? Well, because in 2021, it was reported that archaeologists had unearthed a handful of 2,000-year-old mummies with, wait for it, golden tongues. The mummies were found at Alexandria's Taposiris Magna Temple. There were 16 of them, poorly preserved, buried in rock-cut tombs that would have been popular in the Greek and Roman eras. It is likely the golden tongues were placed into the mouths of the individuals so that they would be able to speak before the court of the god Osiris, the god of the underworld and the judge of the dead. In one of the tombs, Osiris was depicted on the linens encasing one of the mummies. In another tomb, images of a crown, horns, and a cobra snake were depicted around a mummy's head, and a symbol of the god Horus, the god of kingship, healing, protection, the sun, and the sky, was found on the same mummy's chest. The very same excavation turned up ancient funeral masks with golden flakes dating back to the Greek and Roman eras, as well as a number of coins adorned with the name and portrait of Queen Cleopatra VII, the last ruler of the Egyptian Empire.
Next on the list, we have the discovery of mysterious L-shaped structure underneath the Giza Pyramid complex. A team of archaeologists from Japan and Egypt found something really cool near the pyramid complex of Giza. They used ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, to explore the area beneath Giza's western cemetery. The GPR works by capturing wave reflections from underground, and then it creates three-dimensional images. Between 2021 and 2023, they focused on a flat, empty part of the cemetery that strangely didn't have any tombs. But they suspected something was down there. The area had a different density from the surrounding soil, and the shape of whatever this anomaly was made it clear that it was man-made. The radar data showed two underground structures, one shallow and one deeper down. The shallow one, shaped like an L, is about 33 feet wide and 49 feet long, lying 6.5 feet below the surface. The deeper structure is about 16 to 33 feet underground and covers about 33 square feet. The archaeologists were pretty excited because the shapes and the layout of these structures didn't seem like natural formations. It looked like they'd been built by humans. As for exactly what's down there, research is still ongoing, but if it's an underground facility of some kind, there could be tons of artifacts and remains and who knows what else.
Next up, we have something that is not so much scary as it is super cool. In 2016, Ann Austin, an archaeologist at Stanford University, began inspecting the body of a 3,000-year-old female mummy, only to discover something incredibly unusual, for the time that is. The woman's neck was covered in markings. At first, it was believed that they had been drawn on after the woman died, in lieu of placing physical traditional burial amulets on the body. But upon closer inspection, Anne realized that the markings were permanent and that the woman had been alive when she received them, making the markings the oldest representative image tattoos known to man. Earlier markings found on other mummies were made solely up of abstract dots and lines. After thoroughly inspecting the rest of the mummy's body, Anne found 30 separate inkings across the woman's neck, back, arms, and shoulders. This girl was yadded up. Sorry. Images of eyes, snakes, lotus blossoms, and cows, often associated with the goddess Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, music, dancing, fertility, and pleasure, were all present on the body. The mummy was subsequently nicknamed the Priestess of Hathor, and it is believed that the images were etched into her skin during a religious cult activity.
Just this year, a 4,000-plus-year-old ancient Egyptian tomb was discovered, along with a bunch of really cool artifacts. Once again, this was a team of Egyptian and Japanese archaeologists. Now, during their expedition in Saqqara, they found a 4,000-year-old tomb. Inside were the remains of a man buried with a colorful mask dating back to the Second Dynasty, around 2649 to 2150 BC, making him over 4,000 years old. They also found a coffin from the 18th Dynasty containing a well-preserved alabaster vessel. There were also burials with artifacts like terracotta statues, one depicting the goddess Isis, another statue was Harpocrates, the god of silence and secrets. The team also found a bunch of amulets, pottery models, and pieces of broken pottery called ostraka, which were etched with inscriptions.
Alright, this next one is just gross. By now we should all know that mummies and the process of mummification was, in ancient Egypt, an incredibly sacred cultural practice. The process of embalming was meticulous and consisted of 9 stages. 1. Insert a hook through a hole near the nose and pull out part of the brain. 2. Make a cut on the left side of the tummy and remove all internal organs. 3. Let the internal organs dry before placing the lungs, intestine, stomach, and liver inside decorative jars. 4. Place the heart back inside the body. 5. Rinse the inside of the body with wines and spices. 6. Cover the corpse in salt and let rest for 70 days. No, this is not a recipe for a souffle or whatever it might be. 7. Stuff the body with linen or sand to give it back its human shape. 8. Wrap the body from head to toe in bandages using resin to form a seal. And 9. Place the mummy in a sarcophagus. What I want to focus on right now is stage number 8, which utilizes resin, which Europeans mistook for bitumen, which they believed to have healing properties, which led to wealthy Europeans purchasing ground up mummies and consuming them. The health benefits were non-existent, and the whole thing was super gross. Oh, and in the late 1800s, when mummies became too hard to acquire, bodies of deceased, dehydrated criminals were used instead.
Next up, we have the Pit of Hands. Archaeologists have found a number of severed hands in ancient Egyptian tombs, and it's believed that these severed hands were actually war trophies. So back then, it wasn't uncommon for victorious warriors to collect all these grisly souvenirs from their victories. Many historians believe these hands were ritually severed as part of a ceremony, likely to signify the defeat and domination of their enemies. But why hands specifically? Well, hands were symbols of power and agency in ancient Egypt. By removing them, the victors were not only physically disabling their enemies, but also symbolically stripping them of their ability to resist or fight back. It's hard to fight without hands. In one case, a number of these severed hands were found in pits during excavations of a palace near the ancient city of Avaris. These pits contained hundreds of severed hands that were all neatly stacked together, and the largest pit was right in front of the throne room. They seem like they were pretty important. There's even ancient Egyptian artwork depicting soldiers possibly trading severed hands for gold. Some also speculate they could have been depicting offerings to the gods.
Next up, we have the possible discovery of Queen Cleopatra VII's tomb. We are so close, I could taste it, but not in the way Europeans did in the 1800s, because that's gross, but this is incredibly cool. In 2022, a 1,500 meter long, 1.8 meter high tunnel was discovered beneath an Egyptian temple that project leader Dr. Kathleen Martinez believes may very well lead to the lost tomb of the last ruler of Egypt, who was born in 70 or 69 BC and ruled as co-regent for almost 30 years. Inside of the tunnel, located in the area of the Temple of Mount Zeres Magna, west of Alexandria, 2 carefully crafted stone heads were found that only furthered Dr. Martinez's belief that she must have stumbled upon Cleopatra's tomb, which has always been rumored to be located in the area. If Dr. Martinez is correct in her assumption, she may have also found the final resting place of Cleopatra's lover, Mark Antony, who is believed to have been buried alongside his lover, Cleopatra. Romantic.
And finally, we gotta talk about cursed tombs. Pharaohs made it very clear that they didn't want their tombs being broken into, so they'd inscribe them with curses. Didn't really stop anyone, but they are pretty ominous. And there have been some pretty eerie cases of archaeologists and tomb raiders having pretty bad luck after encountering them, or even dying soon after. The curses often threaten lifelong torment, not just for the trespasser, but for their entire family as well. One of the most famous examples is, of course, the curse of King Tut's tomb. When British archaeologist Howard Carter opened the tomb in 1922, several members of his team died under mysterious circumstances shortly after the discovery, leading some to believe that the tomb may have actually been cursed. The curses weren't vague threats either on these tombs. A lot of them are just very blunt, with statements like, "His flesh shall belong to the fire," and "Your entire family will be eaten by crocodiles," and that sort of thing. Maybe not something scientists look at and are all that afraid of, but definitely something that would make me second guess going in there.
First up in our number 10 spot, we have construction technique. So I'm starting us off with one of the most widely known mysteries. How the heck were these things built? Although around 120 pyramids were built in ancient Egypt, there is a complete lack of records that explain how the pyramids were constructed. There are many theories, of course. Some believe the ancient Egyptians used a mixture of sleds and wet sand due to a painting in Khufu's tomb that shows men dragging a colossal statue on a sled while a person in front pours water onto the sand. Apparently, when the correct amount of water is used, it can increase the stiffness of the sand and reduce the friction between the object being dragged and the ground, making the object much easier to move. But even if that is exactly how they got the blocks to the site, how did they build the actual pyramid? Ramps are a common suggestion, but truth be told, it is just a theory and no one has been able to confirm once and for all exactly how they did it. That being said, the most entertaining theory, of course, is that aliens came down to Earth to help them, but until concrete evidence is found, the mystery endures. Moving on to number 9, the purpose of pyramids. While most historians can agree that the primary function of many of the pyramids was to serve as tombs for pharaohs, some researchers suggest that they may have had additional purposes. But what could these be? Well, some have theorized they were used as astronomical observatories or as power plants, while some even wonder if machines were somehow being used or created to harness natural energies. Of course, these theories remained completely speculative, but isn't it strange that after all this time, no one is able to say for certain the exact purpose of these colossal structures? Moving on to number 8. Queen Nefertiti. During the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt, Nefertiti was the great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, recognized for her great beauty and respected for her immense power. Now, her and her husband were known for their radical overhaul of state religious policy, in which they promoted the earliest known form of single deity religion centered on the sun disk. And with her husband, she reigned at what was arguably the wealthiest period of ancient Egyptian history. However, for all her fame and glory in the history books, one thing still remains unanswered: her fate after 1330 BC. You see, despite her influence, her presence completely disappears from historical records after a certain point. And to make matters more mysterious, her tomb has never been found. Some have theorized that her tomb is hidden inside the pyramids, but if that is the case, no one can figure out why it would be hidden in the first place. So to this day, whether her tomb lies inside the ancient pyramids remains a mystery. Moving on to number 7, pyramid alignment. There are a lot of inexplicable things surrounding the elusive pyramids. As we already covered, one of the mysteries involves how they were constructed. and of course the ongoing conspiracy of alien involvement. However, another inexplicable mystery is the precise alignment they fall in. So essentially, the pyramids of Giza are perfectly aligned with the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, with incredible accuracy. In fact, the alignment is so precise that it's difficult to explain how the ancient Egyptians achieved such precise orientation without modern technology. So many Egyptologists have of course wondered, was this alignment achieved by chance, or does it indicate an advanced understanding of astronomy? Could this be another mystery pointing towards alien involvement? Who knows? I mean, historians are probably not jumping to that conclusion, to be fair. But many have used this to back up their own theories about the extraterrestrial hand in the pie. Coming in at number 6, precision. Sort of along the lines of the mystery of construction and alignment is the precise measurements and geometry of the pyramids. Looking back, it is fascinating and a little mysterious to observe, as advanced mathematical knowledge would have to been required to achieve the level of precision shown in the pyramids. In comes the aliens. Again, we can't get away from them. There are countless speculations that the ancient Egyptians acquired this advanced knowledge from an alien species. And I mean, of course, there's no way to confirm this, but whether you believe the alien theory or not, the fact of the matter is that where and how they acquired this knowledge is still up for debate. Coming in at number 5. Why did they stop? So not only do historians question how the pyramids were built, but the other million-dollar question is, why did they stop? So the last royal pyramid was built around 1500 BCE, and afterwards, while wealthy individuals were occasionally buried in or near pyramids, pharaohs were instead buried in the Valley of Kings near Thebes. But what exactly caused the rulers of Egypt to abandon their practice of pyramid burials? We aren't totally sure. One theory is that religious changes around 1500 BCE began emphasizing building tombs underground in the bedrock rather than in pyramids. Another theory points out that because tomb robbing was a major issue, that there were far less chance that burials would be looted if they weren't placed in such conspicuous settings. Another theory put forward by engineer Peter James came after he discovered that the extreme temperature fluctuations of the Egyptian desert were causing the limestone to expand and contract, which in turn meant that the stone blocks began moving to the edges of the pyramid, which would force them to detach or break, taking the outer casing with them. He theorizes this disintegration likely happened while pyramid building was still occurring, and after spending so much time, money, and energy creating perfect monuments, this visible and rapid destruction of the perfection could have been one reason pharaohs abandoned them as burial monuments altogether. But again, it's just all speculation. Moving on to number 4, far away from home. In 2013, archaeologists in Israel found something they'd never expected to find so far away from Egypt: a 4,000-year-old Egyptian sphinx. Specifically, they found the paws of the statue, and it's believed the rest of it was deliberately destroyed thousands of years ago. But here's the thing: nobody knows what an Egyptian statue was doing in Israel. The only clue left behind is an inscription on the base that bears the name King Menkore, who was a pharaoh that ruled over Egypt around 2500 BC. Was it something that was handed over after a losing bet? We're not totally sure. It's highly unlikely that Tel Hazor, Israel was conquered by the Egyptians, because at the time Tel Hazor was a trading hub in Canaan directly between Egypt and Babylon. This meant it would have been vital for the economy that the two biggest powers in the area remained on good terms. So a gift? Maybe, though it's not clear why King Menkore would have sent it or why anyone would have shattered it. All we really know is that for some reason there is a sphinx 1,000 kilometers away from the Great Sphinx of Giza. Moving on to number 3, mysterious cavities in the Pyramid of Khufu. In 2017, Scan Pyramids made a massive discovery inside the Pyramid of Khufu. With the aid of a non-invasive scanning technique that uses cosmic rays to produce 3D images, researchers discovered 2 previously unknown voids inside the pyramid, making them the first new spaces found inside inside the pyramid since the 19th century. But of the two voids, the larger one was particularly interesting. Not much is known about this larger chamber. It is apparently unlikely to be a burial chamber, but historians theorize it could be a second grand gallery, or more intriguingly, hold some of the secrets to the engineering and construction behind the pyramids. But truth be told, they have no clue why it's there or what its purpose would have been during ancient Egypt, as the Egyptians deliberately built the hidden chamber to be completely inaccessible. There are no corridors or pathways connected to it, and the only way they could have put anything inside is if they filled the chamber while they were building the pyramid, then sealed it up afterward. Were they trying to hide something? We may never know. Coming in at number 2, the Pyramid of Djudefre. Son of the pharaoh Khufu, Djudefre was Khufu's successor and ruled during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom of Egypt. However, it is believed that Djudefre's reign was plagued by political and religious controversies, and that he wasn't Egypt's favorite ruler. Still, he, like his father, wanted his pyramid to have the highest point of any pyramid in Egypt. But there was one problem. He didn't have the resources to build the biggest pyramid. So, Djudefre used a little workaround to make sure the tip of his tomb was just a little bit taller than everybody else's, and built it on a hill. However, the mystery about this pyramid, compared to the others, is it's no longer standing. For some reason, while all the other pyramids of Egypt are still standing after thousands of years, Djudefre's pyramid has been totally destroyed, and all we are left with today is the base. Now, being a mystery and all, it's not entirely clear what's happened to it. Some think that Djudefre simply died before they were able to get much of the work done, and his pyramid was left in ruins. Another theory suggests that Romans quarried it for stones 2,000 years ago, and so it was simply torn down. And the most chaotic theory is that others think that the people of Egypt simply hated Djudefre so much that they were willing to pull apart an entire pyramid just out of spite. And last up in our number 1 spot, a mysterious queen. There are of course many tombs within the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and while they're all interesting in their own right, this one in particular is still puzzling historians and Egyptologists. In 2015, archaeologists stumbled upon the tomb of a woman who was buried among the Great Pyramids of the Old Kingdom of Egypt. In her tomb were inscriptions calling her both the wife and the mother of the king. Now, they were able to decipher a few things. This woman would have been alive 4,500 years ago and would have been one of the most important and powerful people on the planet at that time. So why have we never heard of her, and why can't we figure out who she was? Historians have dubbed her Kentekawes III under the assumption that she was the daughter of Queen Kentekawes II, and think she may have been the wife of the pharaoh Neferefre and the mother of the pharaoh Mekar. But again, they don't really know, they're just guessing. Whoever she was once an incredibly powerful woman, but today she is a little more than an enigma.